The Hist gave his people life, form, purpose. It was the Hist who had seen through the shadows to the Oblivion crisis, who called all the people back to the marsh, defeated the forces of Mehrunes Dagon, drove the Empire into the sea, and laid waste to their ancient enemies in Morrowind. As they ventured deeper westward, into the heart of Black Marsh, into terrain once thought impenetrable to foreigners, the two travellers encountered ancient wonders. They saw the vast, complicated ruins of the Kofringi capitals, fields of ferns and flowered grasses, quiet streams under canopies of blue moss, and the most astonishing sight of their lives, the great forest of full-grown Hist trees. And at no point did they see another living soul. This land was wild and untamed, the purest possible distillation of Kinnereth's creation. Most impressive of all were the roots of those marvellous trees. Beneath the swamp, the roots grow deep and spread so wide it is impossible to know which tree they originated from. In a way, I believe the roots are the marsh. The roots hold it all together, and they determine when it changes. It's no surprise that Men and Mer of Tamriel perceive the lizard folk as alien. Topal the pilot was quick to denounce their primal societies, as the Aldmer and their descendants are quick to do to all other races. He described this same province as a fetid and evil place. Invading legions over the centuries have arrived at similar conclusions, speaking of venomous plants, poisonous bogs, and strange natives. The truth is, the land of Argonia has humbled Tamriel's greatest leaders. Many have tried to conquer the marsh, and some have succeeded in part, though always at great cost. But the home of the Argonians has never truly been subdued. Maybe this is why the Hist trees are so shrouded in mystery to the modern day. Some would scoff at the notion that they're sentient. All trees are alive, but they cannot talk or think or walk. Yet these skeptics can't explain why the Black Marsh acts like a living being. Valenwood and early Cyrodiil were difficult to traverse, yet the Empire managed to get the regions under control. Argonia, on the other hand, master trackers and survival experts have been foiled by this land on a whim. No one has seen the terrain move explicitly, but navigation is nigh impossible, and these same navigators have been led in circles, as if the forests and swamps were toying with them, wearing them down, whittling away their rations, before consuming their remains, which turns to fertile soil for the marsh. The roots change, and only the lizard folk are privy to the secrets of surviving in this strange place. Hey guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. In this video we're going to wade through dank bogs, dense jungles and hidden groves, exploring an aspect of Tamrielic lore that no modern scholar can truly claim to fully understand. And as I'm not an Argonian, I'm not going to tell you that I have all the answers. But what I do have is all the information we have on the histories of Argonia, and by the end of the video, we'll know all there is to know about them, from their significance throughout history to their role in the lives of the Argonians, and we'll discover just how powerful these sentient trees truly are. So let's not waste any time, and on the topic of time, we're going to go back to the beginning, because the Hist were there when life began on Mundus, back in the Dawn Era. Before there were men, mer and beasts, there were the Elnathay and the Hist, and before then there was only Anu and Padamai, the two primordial forces of creation. Anu was stasis, he was light, the originator of all things. Padamai was change, darkness, the provider of limitation, the tonic which allowed omnipotent perfection to experience variation. With the interplay of these two forces, a recipe for life was made. Their mingling created Nirn, who would give birth to all creation. 12 worlds were forged, but the brothers Anu and Padamai battled, for Padamai hated creation. When their duel was over, the two forces retreated, leaving the realm alone, a war-torn battlefield. The 12 worlds were largely destroyed, but before his departure, Anu tried to salvage as much as he could, combining the remnants into one world, Nirn. The blood of Padamai became the Daedra, the blood of Anu the stars. Their combined blood became the Aedra. On the planet of Nirn, chaos was abundant. The only survivors of the battle were the Elnathay and the Hist. This creation story, featured in the annotated Annuad, is complicated, and the metaphorical is difficult to distinguish from the literal, but it proceeds to explain how the Elnathay transformed into the modern races. A large fragment of the Elnathay world landed on Nirn relatively intact, and the Elnafey living there were the ancestors of the Mer. These Elnafey fortified their borders from the chaos outside, hid their pocket of calm, and attempted to live on as before. Other Elnafey arrived on Nirn scattered amid the confused jumble of the Shattered Worlds, wandering and finding each other over the years. Eventually, the wandering Elnafey found the hidden land of Old Elnafey, and were amazed and joyful to find their kin living amid the splendour of ages past. The wandering Elnafey expected to be welcomed into the peaceful realm, but the Old Elnafey looked on them as degenerates, fallen from their former glory. For whatever reason, war broke out and raged across the whole of Nirn. The Old Elnafey retained their ancient power and knowledge, but the Wanderers were more numerous and toughened by their long struggle to survive on Nirn. This war reshaped the face of Nirn, sinking much of the land beneath new oceans, and leaving the lands as we know them, Tamriel, Akavir, Atmora and Yakuda. The Old Elnafey realm, although ruined, became Tamriel. The remnants of the Wanderers were left divided on the other 3 continents. This war was the precursor for the everlasting tensions between man and Mer, setting the stage for Tamriel's turbulent history. The Old Elnafey became the races of Mer, Dwemer, Kaima, Dunmer, Bosmer, Altmer, etc., and the wandering Elnafey became the races of men, Nords of Atmora, Redguards of Yakuda, and Saisi of Akavir. But where did the Hist fit into all of this? Well, they were present as early as the Old Elnafey, only they did not fight in the war and remained impartial bystanders. Unfortunately for the Hist, most of their realm was destroyed as the war passed over it. A small corner of it survived to become Black Marsh in Tamriel, but most of their realm was sunk beneath the sea. Say what you will about the varying creation stories, there is certainly something about Black Marsh that seems otherworldly. It doesn't belong in Tamriel, like a patch of rough-spun fabric crudely stitched onto a sheet of silk. But what became of the Hist's realm? According to the book Lord of Souls by Gregory Keyes, the realm of the Hist was not entirely destroyed, and it remains as a plane of oblivion even now. It is an entire realm populated by sentient trees, and between them, whisperials dance on the breeze, leaving luminescent trails in the air behind them. Early in the 4th Era, when Umbra ripped free a large chunk of Clavicus Vile's realm, the floating island of Umbriel was formed. It is said that on this buoyant bubble of oblivion, suspended high above Tamriel, Hist trees existed. What's even more interesting is that the Hist of Black Marsh seemed to have communed with the Hist of Umbriel, as an Argonian hero of Tamriel named Mir Glim was reborn within Umbriel, seemingly sent from one place to the other, like pieces of the same hive. When Umbriel returned to Oblivion, the Hist trees took control, guiding the island to their Hist realm instead of Clavicus's realm. I think it's fair to say these are no ordinary trees. Whatever the fate of the Hist homeland, they have made a new home in Tamriel. The Hist were once widespread, not just confined to Black Marsh, but they are not agile, active beings, and their strength lies in density. Isolated histories may exist. For example, many theorize that the sleeping tree of Skyrim originated from a spore which fell from the island of Umbriel, while others say it was a piece of arcane debris that was spewed from Red Mountain when it erupted. But for the most part, the survival of the Hist relies on an intricate system of interconnected roots. It's said that the roots of all Hist trees within Black Marsh are connected beneath the ground. This link allows all Hist in the network to communicate, from Stormhold in the north to Lilmoth in the south, even Hellstrom in the very heart of the province. Every tree is connected. And speaking of connections, Tamrielic anthropologists have often speculated about the true origins of the Argonian lizard folk. They are so different to men and Mer, and their creation is not as easily explained as Azura and the Khajiit. The Argonians hatch from eggs and rely on hatching pools that form inside nests of raised Hist roots. As they grow within the egg and eventually hatch, a bond is forged between the Argonian and the Hist. An Argonian embryo that hatches without the influence of a Hist hatching pool will not survive. Once born, Argonian hatchlings drink the Hist sap, and continue to do so throughout their infancy. Supposedly, it is this essential nourishment that gives a young Argonian its soul. It's not unprecedented for an Argonian to be born outside of Black Marsh and the reach of the trees, though it is said that these Argonians are disadvantaged, maladjusted to Argonian social cues and body language. Naturally, when an Argonian dies, the soul travels back to the Hist, seeping into the soil, returning to the network. From birth to death, Argonians are one with the Hist, and this is almost certainly a major reason why the Hist seem to be so all-knowing. With every soul returning to the network, the Hist hive mind collects their memories. How the Hist predicted the Oblivion crisis is uncertain, but it stands to reason that, with so many Argonian agents across Tamriel, the Hist are privy to a great deal of information. Even with information, the Hist can't exactly speak. They aren't Ents. However, they can make their will known to Argonians who ingest Hist Sap in the right manner. Licking the sap gives the Argonian visions, and it can even alter their physical makeup, from gender to appearance to enhancing strength. A scholar named Sirantil posited an interesting theory on the concentrated potential of Hist Sap. Argonians are cold-blooded in both the physiological sense and the psychological sense, and yet they somehow manage to operate in all climates with the same resilience as mammals. Their preference for subtropical and tropical climates notwithstanding, to see an Argonian moving through subarctic or arctic regions with the same facility as their mammalian rivals is simply astounding. The Hist supposedly emanates from all nature in Tamriel, but is particularly strong in Hist trees. The sap that flows from a Hist tree contains concentrated magicka. I believe that this Hist sap gives the Argonians the ability to defy the logical limits of their own physiology. No other race on Tamriel relies on the Hist the way the Argonians do, so it's hard to quantify just how much of an impact Hist sap can have on a mortal. Argonians are born in pools of the stuff, drink it throughout their lives, and it's even said that female Argonian breasts contain Hist sap, and this is an additional way for deprived Argonians to receive the nurturing of their tree gods. As I said before, the Hist can communicate with Argonians through visions granted by the consumption of sap, and unsurprisingly this is a major aspect of Argonian religion. Depending on the region and the tribe, those entrusted with Hist communication are given titles like Tree Minder or Sap Speaker. The visions that come from Hist sap consumption are considered sacred to Argonians, and though cryptic, it's their best means of understanding the will of their botanical overlords. Invoking Hist visions are usually done in controlled circumstances, as overdosing on Hist sap is a serious concern even for Argonians, who are known for being naturally resistant to diseases and poisons. One symptom of sap poisoning is called gold tongue, and permanently changes the affected individual's mouth pigmentation to a golden hue. Another symptom called bark scale can thicken and darken the surface scales of an Argonian. Unwanted hallucinations seem to accompany all other symptoms of sap poisoning. What's interesting is that the Blackwood Company, a mercenary faction operating out of Leowyn, sought out Hist sap with the intention of overdosing. The darkened hue of their scales became a staple of the borderline illegal organization. An Argonian named Jaralit documented his attempts to induce Hist visions. He writes, though no alchemist, Jaralit concocted formula after formula. He distilled various ichors, combining each one in varying amounts with Hist sap, tasting them all, making adjustments. He felt the Hist urge him on, demanding he break through its silence. Finally, Jaralit drank his master decoction. He savoured the thick, sweet syrup coating his tongue, standing quietly beneath the Hist's outstretched bowels. His eyes glittered with comprehension. "I am your child and servant," he whispered, and the Hist showed him all things. One of the more potent forms of Hist hallucination is called the dream wallow, and it is said that this precise state of mind blurs the lines of vision and reality, placing the intoxicated lizard somewhere between the material and immaterial. In the dream wallow, objects can physically manifest before them in reality, transported from the dream realm. In order to achieve this particular state of mind, the Argonian must undergo a period of isolation and exposure to potent mind-altering herbs. Once consumed, the deep sap is ingested. Deep sap is Hist sap collected from deep within the ground, fresh, pure, and unaffected by the elements. Some tribes claim to see bizarre metaphors, like clams challenging them to games of riddles. Other tribes face challenges of might, in which the Hist send dream beasts to test their prowess. It would seem that the Hist-Argonian relationship is one of mutual benefit. The simplified explanation of the creation of the Argonian race is that the lizard folk were born from the Hist hatching pools, so that the immobile trees could see the world, exploring the corners of the continent they could not reach themselves. Wherever an Argonian travelled, when their soul was recollected by the Hist and filed into the hive mind, all of their memories and experiences would be catalogued, added to the ever-growing archive. And in life, the Argonians would protect the Hist and all of Black Marsh. This protective relationship is clear through the journals of the tree minders. One wrote his concerns for a specific tree. His name was RT, and he writes, "Something stirs within the tree. I feel uneasy, as though eyes peer at me from under dark waters. I stayed among the roots late into the night, unable to sleep with the unsteady vibration in my bones. I have cared for this Hist nearly all my years, and have always been able to find the cause of the few troubles it felt. I shall call out to the fellow tree minders. Perhaps they know more than I." And the Argonians also benefit greatly from this eternal alliance. Not only do they receive the nurturing, strengthening properties of the magicka-rich Hist Sap, but they are also forewarned of catastrophic events by the hyper-intelligent hive mind. The Hist prophesied the coming of the Oblivion crisis, and communed this to the Argonians, calling the race back to the confines of Black Marsh. The positive outcomes of this warning were compounded, as the time Argonians had to prepare meant that they could orchestrate their defense of the province, and even retaliate by going on the offensive. A political faction known as the Anzalil capitalized on this by rallying troops and flooding into the newly opened Oblivion gates. Before the Daedra could launch their invasion, the lizard folk were breaking through the void, catching the forces of the Deadlands completely off guard. The Argonians' northern oppressors, the Dunmer of Morrowind, did not fare so well in the Oblivion crisis. They were drastically weakened. But before they could properly mend their wounds, the Anzalil led a follow-up offensive, exacting brutal revenge on the Dark Elves for centuries of slavery. They were eventually repelled, but not before they could claim significant portions of southern Morrowind. So it would seem there is no denying the link between the Argonians and the Hist, and any scholar who takes the time to investigate these graminaceous wonders will quickly discover they are far more than simply trees. The intense veneration the lizardkin have for them should be the first indicator, and if you needed more convincing, simply gaze upon their ethereal beauty. Their bioluminescent flowers glow a brilliant vermilion, a striking contrast to the dark earthen hue of the boughs and twisting branches, and the honey gold sap seeping from cracks in the bark. What goes on beneath the surface of Tamriel's most inhospitable province is uncertain, but the complex network of roots spread under Black Marsh like a great circulatory system, and we may never know the extent of this hive mind's omniscience. But that's what makes the land of the Argonians, their practices, and their revered flora so mysterious and fascinating. And there you have it, guys, the Hist. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks so much for watching. I've been Drew, and I'll see you in the next one.